Welcome to the Religious Treehouse. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Jodie.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here today. I had some coffee. I'm hyped. I'm ready for this conversation. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I tore something in my leg. I already
Oh,
told you. I was hiking and I went to go see dinosaur footprint at this
oh,
place. It's called Dinosaur Valley. There was a river on top of them, so it was very hard to see them. And then there was small children throwing rocks and making the
right.
river all cloudy. So
Oh, are these like
no,
real dinosaur footprints or is this like a tourist trap?
no, it's real dinosaur tracks they found in this river, like 2 hours south of us. It's called Fossil Rim. They have this river, like there's this area where there's like 300 and
Okay.
dinosaur tracks, and they call it the ballroom because they're moving in different directions, and they found a lot of fossils over there. I was looking at jobs in archaeology because I was like, are they still digging? I
Mm.
dig. But it was pretty fun. It was actually just the tracks though were just down the street from a creation evidence museum. I tried to stop there. They said critics and skeptics welcome for free. So I
Oh,
was getting in for free, but it was closed on Sundays.
well, that makes
So,
sense.
so
Okay,
yeah.
but okay, here's me being skeptical of the dinosaur footprints, and maybe I just don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
It was in a river, and is this just mud?
No, so it was like embedded in the riverbed because it's rock now. They're
Yeah, okay.
fossilized. So yeah.
Okay, so they're fossilized type things.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I can follow now. I thought that there was this tourist trap that's like, hey, look at this mud. These are some real dinosaur footprints, and they've been around for millions of years in the mud. And I'm like, no, they haven't. That's not true. There's a river.
Yeah. No, apparently it's easier to see them in the summer, but when the water's there, it's also used as a swimming hole. So there was
Oh,
children with water guns.
yeah.
And yeah, we were not properly dressed, but we will be next time. And
Oh,
we also went to a nature thing where we got to feed animals. They only gave you one bag of food per car
mm,
because the animals need to not get fat.
yeah.
So it was a good weekend.
Yeah, well, congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay, back on track. We're
Back
talking about
on track.
Habakkuk. We're talking about Habakkuk today. Uh, one of my favorite books of the Bible. I'd call this like a solid top five. Probably not a top three, but a for sure top five.
Yeah, I have questions on that after rereading it. Continue.
Yeah. Like, and who knows how this episode is going to go. I'm going to apologize in advance because I like studied this like in fairly good detail like 2 years ago.
Mm.
And like usually when I do these episodes, I like do a little bit of research. I like, okay, let's see what's going on there. Refresh my memory about important things, yada yada yada. This one, I kind of was like, I know what I'm talking about. And then like a few minutes before we started recording here, I like reread Habakkuk a couple of times, and I'm like, oh no, maybe I don't remember what's going on. So we're gonna see how this conversation goes. I'm excited for it, but I think it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, this book
Um,
bummed me out. Let's
it
get
bummed
into
you.
it.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
get
it
into it.
bummed me out.
Well, yeah, let's talk about it. Do we have we ever done like a brief introduction to the prophets?
No, let's do that now because why should we listen to them?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that we've talked about like Jonah, but like Jonah is like one of the weirdest prophets that like doesn't have anything to do with like actual prophets. And we've talked about Moses
Yeah,
and like the prophetic call narrative and
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
But I tend to like stay away from like I don't know if we've ever done like a deep dive into Isaiah
No, we haven't.
or
And
anything like that.
I mean, I just think it's good to give a little review on prophets at the beginning of each prophet episode because it could be someone's first time.
Sure, sure. So, okay, so in the order of the Hebrew Bible, we have the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. The Nevi'im translates to the prophets,
Yeah.
and that's generally separated into the former prophets and the latter prophets. The former prophets are going to be your Judges, Joshua, Samuel, Kings, those books. The books that are like, you look at them and you're like, that's not prophets, but like, you kind of read them and like, okay, there's prophets in here, cool.
Mm.
And then we have the latter prophets, and those are the ones that you're like, oh yeah, these are our prophets. You have your Isaiah, your Jeremiah, your Ezekiel, and then the book of the 12, which are the 12 minor prophets. The major prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, are major because they're longer. The minor prophets are minor because they're shorter and smaller.
Okay.
Um, and there's 12 of them. That's what we're talking about today. Habakkuk is part of the minor prophets. In the Christian canon, Daniel is also part of the prophetic literature. In the Jewish canon, Daniel is
Mm.
part of the Ketuvim, the writings, and isn't
Uh,
considered to be prophetic literature per se.
and there's no fights about that anymore. They fought it out already.
I mean, yeah, I think like everyone's like, hey, is that book in your Bible? Yeah, it's in our Bible. Okay, cool, whatever. However we categorize it is, you know, I'm sure people are fighting about it, but no one's really fighting about it.
I know.
It would be the same fight of, hey, should we put Ruth alongside um, Joshua and Judges and Samuel, or can Ruth go in the back of the book with the other writings? Um, which is where it belongs in the back of the book with the other writings. But
Oh, oh, oh,
and
oh.
this is where we disagree, but that's fine.
Well,
This is
yeah,
this is just us being pedantic and fun and silly.
because I stand up for women, Matthew. I can't help
Yeah.
it that you don't.
Hey, listen, Ruth's a fun book. Not as fun as Esther, but
Yep,
like were fun. They're fun books.
fun
Um,
books.
so yeah, the prophets are often people like when we think of prophecy, we think of like future telling and stuff like that. And that's not
Yeah.
how we should think of prophets. We should think of
Oh,
prophets as kind of like speaking on behalf of God. That can probably be the most generalized, easy way to think of prophets. And they're talking to um, royalty. There's the prophets that talk to the kings and stuff, and there's prophets that speak for the people and stuff like that. Here we're talking about Habakkuk. We don't really see Habakkuk talking to a king or anything. He's just kind of doing his own thing, saying, "Hey, heard this from God. Listen up." Uh,
by
but
that.
what do you mean? What'd you
How
say?
do you verify that he heard this from God?
It said right there. Well, technically,
Well,
it said he saw.
oh, so
Technically,
you're just
Habakkuk
supposed to
saw.
believe him?
Yeah.
You're just supposed to believe a man. He's like, I talked to God. Here's what he said. Like, how did they decide, okay, we're going to listen to these prophets and their books get to be in the Bible?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we look at like let's look at Jonah for example.
Hmm.
We only have reference twice.
Yeah.
We have Jonah in the Book of Kings, and we have Jonah in the Book of Jonah.
Yeah.
And in the Book of Kings, Jonah says a prophecy that's ends up being wrong, if I remember correctly. And so it's like, okay, cool. Maybe we don't take this guy super, super seriously, but to some extent, we take him seriously because the Book of Jonah, even though he gave the worst sermon of all time, and besides the point.
Yet
So
it's the most popular.
because it's a good one, uh, and so the court officials that the prophets that would speak to the kings often would kind of support the king in some sense and be like, hey king, do
Hey, King.
this. Hey king, like I'm not gonna fully say that you're wrong. I'm not gonna fully be like, oh my goodness, you're so wrong, but like maybe you should do this or God's gonna destroy us all. And so like a lot of times these prophets would critique the kings to some extent without ever like
Mhm.
stepping over too much.
That
And
seems more like an advisor than a prophet.
yeah, yeah, and I think that there's overlap for sure,
Mhm.
but I think the prophet's duty more so aligned with how the deity and religion, however we want to define that in the ancient world, um, worked within that aspect. So the king, the prophet have this relationship, and the prophet would often use past events to kind of explain current realities and would occasionally look at like future events as well and be like, hey, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, then A, B, and C are going to happen. And that's not so much as future telling as immediate warnings of being like, hey, something's going on wrong right here. There's injustice happening. We can't let this injustice continue happening. And
Yeah.
if we do continue to let this injustice happen, then God's
Hmm.
going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And I'm overgeneralizing here for sure, but I
Yeah.
think that's how we can kind of briefly reduce prophecy in the Old Testament.
What do you call those guys who predict how long you're going to live in order to do like insurance things? Do you know what I'm
Oh,
talking about?
yeah, they're like oh, your life is worth $17 or whatever.
Well, not
The
just that, but like they like predict based upon like what job you work, what hobbies you have,
your
you'll live to be
happiness.
this
Yeah.
long.
Uh-huh. Not
It's like
not the
that.
same thing. No.
It's coming across like that because it's
Uh,
like based upon A, B, and C, we
yeah.
think this is gonna happen. Like it's just a prediction. Like they probably have like a good reason to think why they do, but they don't know for certain.
Right. And so yeah, but it's not so much looking it's often in a critique of some
Mm,
sort of saying, hey, this is going on and that's
yeah.
bad. And
Mm.
therefore we should fix our bad ways and we should do better. And if we do better, then maybe X, Y, and Z won't happen and we'll be okay. But
So they're Jiminy Cricket.
I've I know that's a Pinocchio reference, but I have no idea what you mean by that.
Always let your conscience be your guide. Jiminy's in Pinocchio's ear going, don't do this, otherwise this is gonna happen. You should be doing this
Yeah,
instead.
yeah, sure. Um, but so then in Habakkuk, what we have is kind of something similar, where Habakkuk is complaining about God. He's like, "Hey, God, why'd you let this bad thing happen?" And God's like, "Calm down, it'll be okay." And Habakkuk's like, "No, it's not." And then eventually we kind of get like the solution at the end there to some extent.
I
But
want you to know I've
regarding
now decided we are going to be watching Pinocchio and talking about the prophets. Sorry, continue.
oh, but regarding like the writing of the prophets, regarding the
Prophets?
writing of the prophets, these tend to be a little bit earlier in
Mm-hmm.
the writing, like compared to Esther and Daniel and stuff. Most of them come along during either the first temple period at the
Mm-hmm.
earliest, going through the exilic period,
Yeah,
and then maybe a little bit later after that. But we can trace a lot of the prophets back to, about the time when they claim to be righted.
yeah,
And then, like most things in the Bible, they get edited as time goes on and they get added
mm,
to and they get changed.
yeah.
And as a broad overall generalization that can't be taken seriously every time, you
Mm,
can kind of see the doom and gloom aspects of the prophets
yeah.
as largely being closer to the older stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then as the more positive, happy things that the prophets say, generally, sometimes you can consider that to be additions of some sort.
Okay.
Uh, and that's not by any means a hard and fast rule, but like we'll kind of see it in Habakkuk
Yeah.
that chapters 1 and 2 very doom and gloom, very sad, very angry at God, and then chapter 3 is like,
Mm,
hey, God's this great warrior. Thank you so much, God, for being this mighty warrior, and
yeah.
you're saving us. Thank you, God.
Yeah.
And chapter 3 is likely a separate edition, so
Yeah.
we can get into that.
With the prophets, are there any like similarities amongst them, like defining characteristics, or it's just random?
What do you mean?
Well, like I know they weren't all like Levites, but that's who I would assume.
Mm,
Like if someone were to hand me the Bible and I didn't
mm,
know what the religion was and I was reading it like a book and
yeah,
I got to the part with the prophets, I don't know why, but I feel like I would assume, oh yeah, they're all going to be like Levites or something like that, like
sure. So
or
Levites
from a
generally are
similar
associated.
lineage.
Yeah, so Levites are generally associated with the priestly line.
Hmm.
So priests you can
Yeah.
more so associate with Levites.
Hmm.
Prophets come from whatever
Wherever.
tribe you want.
Anyone.
Uh,
Like there's
you
no
will,
prerequisites to be a
I
prophet.
mean, generally you have to be tight with God in some sense of the word, but like a lot of times you'll get a call narrative, which we talked
Hmm.
about in our Jonah episode.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe we talked about it in our Moses episode. I know we talked about it at some point. I think it was in our Jonah episode,
Yeah.
episode um, 16, for those wondering. uh,
Let
uh,
us know.
and so what we have there is like kind of a set narrative that lets us know, hey, this is a prophet because they follow X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
and they do X, Y, and Z so that it all happens. We're like, okay, that's how a prophet starts their
Okay.
call.
But just during this time, they were cool with like people coming up and being like, listen, I have a prophecy?
Yeah, and like the prophecies were kind of explained in various ways. You have different methodologies.
Mm,
Ezekiel, classic Ezekiel, he did a lot of sign acts.
mm,
So a lot of like kind of like street performance, we could kind of say is a modern parallel, where you do these prophetic messages through acts to be like, hey, this weird thing is happening. This is something that's been told to me, and we kind of act it out.
mm.
So Ezekiel does some fun things regarding not talking for like a year, or maybe it was longer than that, but he goes a while without talking, and then Isaiah takes off all his clothes, and so like
Oh,
we have instances of these sign acts that
uh-huh.
are prophetic messages that come through performance of some extent as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Like sideshow prophets, like Chris Angels of the
Yeah.
Bible. Okay, I think I might want to talk about them more. Okay, so no prerequisites. They just say, hey, God spoke to me. This is what he
Mhm.
said. But they must have had like some of them must have had like proximity to like the king in order to get, because how else would you
Yeah.
go to the king and say this?
Right, right. There's some sort, you raise the ranks, and that's not to say that all prophets had
Hmm.
some relationship with the king.
Yeah,
Some prophets were just kind of minding their own business and speaking to the people, and the prophecy wasn't for the king per se, but
yeah.
more so towards the general audience, whoever is supposed to hear it. But we get a lot of courtroom prophets.
Do we think they would have like written down their stuff or gone to someone else to write it down?
It depends. I don't know off the top of my head. So we have Jeremiah,
Mm.
famously, who has a scribe named Baruch. So like we have evidence like, hey, there's probably a history of like this prophet dictating something to
Yeah.
a scribe.
Okay.
And then we have others which are probably more oral,
Yeah.
and they get written down by either the followers of Isaiah, or not
Mm.
Isaiah. I mean, Isaiah is the example I was thinking of in my head,
Yeah.
but they get written down by like followers of that prophet, or like later traditions attribute the prophecies to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, also both kind of.
It's amazing, like the ambiguity. I know these are probably annoying questions because you're like, it could be anything, but
Yeah.
it's just fun to think about how these things came into existence, like
Mm,
from person A to person B to it being written down and then later translated or edited, added
yeah.
on. Um, are we good on prophets? Because I got two questions to kick off Habakkuk.
Yeah, let's get started with Habakkuk.
Number one, who is this man? Number two, why should anyone listen to him?
Right. I can answer number one. I
Okay,
mean, not in a way that you'll like, but
great.
number
We know
two,
nothing.
that's up to you. We know nothing about Habakkuk in
We
summary.
know nothing.
So a lot of prophets will get kind of like an introductory remark to be like, "Hey, this is our man Amos, who's from this area and knows this guy."
Yeah,
Here we get the introductory verse here. The oracle the prophet Habakkuk saw. Okay, what does that tell us about him? He's not really mentioned anywhere else in the Bible apart from um, in the Apocrypha, in the story of Bel and the Dragon that we talked about in episode 19. And
okay.
and then so yeah, we know essentially nothing about this guy. We can
Except,
kind of determine. Sorry, you have a thought?
oh, I was going to say, except him getting dragged by his weave.
Yeah, he did do that. Check out Bell and the Dragon for more.
Yeah,
Oh, but we can kind of date this to sometime after the destruction of the Northern Kingdom, but
okay,
before the destruction of the temple in the Southern Kingdom.
okay. The
So this
Northern Kingdom being Judah?
no, the Southern Kingdom being Judah.
Northern Kingdom is
The rest,
the rest.
the
It
rest of
didn't have a
the.
name.
Oh, I mean the Northern Kingdom.
Okay,
Yeah, and you know how it is.
okay.
Oh, but like we can put this somewhere between like the year 600 and there 605 and 539
Mhm.
BCE,
Yeah,
which is like early in the Neo-Babylonian Empire.
okay.
And then
Neo means what? Is that like
new
the,
the
okay,
beginning, the
thank you.
early parts. Uh And then, so yeah, I think because we have reference to like the temple in like verse in chapter 2, verse 20, yeah,
Mhm.
we can probably place this before the temple was destroyed, or
Okay.
at the very least referring back to placing itself in the time while the temple was still written. So
Okay.
I would argue that this was written somewhere around 600 BCE, give
Okay.
or take 25 years. And I could be wrong here, but that's how we can kind of identify when this is happening ish.
Can you
Now,
think of any other writings that were written around that time?
um, off the top of my head, no, like without being like this specific.
Yeah.
Uh, but but we can kind of assume this is. I don't want to say that definitively because there's this is fairly early, but not super super early.
Okay.
If if that kind of helps your mindset.
Yeah.
I think this is near when Deuteronomy was written,
Hmm.
but like also it's not.
Okay.
Also, we're off by a little here.
Okay.
Anyways,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. Why should we care about this guy?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I think if you're Christian or Jewish, like obviously there's importance in the Bible, but like we've talked about that in all of our
Yep.
episodes. But I think like even apart from that, even if you're like, hey, why do we care about this guy? I think it has good themes that it talks about. It talks about interesting, at the very least, it's a compelling conversation to read and be a part of.
Hmm.
And as with all ancient literature, I think it's revealing of some extent of human nature. And I think that's part of the reason why it survived so long is because it holds some form of literary and emotional and existential importance.
Hmm.
And that's why we should care about it because it's fun.
This reading was hard
Okay.
because it upset me
Okay.
because I found themes that I feel like people could like look at modern day,
Okay.
and it just was not fun. Was
Sure.
foreboding.
Uh-huh.
So I can only imagine what the people who heard this back then must have felt.
Yeah. No, I don't think it was supposed to be fun for sure.
No.
We start with, the first few verses. Oh Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not listen, or cry to you violence and you will not save? Why do you make me see wrongdoing and look at trouble? Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contention arise. Habakkuk starts off in a bad place. He's grumpy. He's like, there are bad things happening. Uh, and like, why is this? Why are we letting this happen? Oh, we get into verse 6. This is God talking now. This is likely God talking now. For I'm rousing the Chaldeans, that fierce and impetuous nation who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. And the Chaldeans is likely is another word for the Babylonians, referring to the Babylonians here. And so that's how we kind of know what's going on. This is in reference to the Babylonians attacking the Northern Empire, yada, yada, yada. Bad things happen. The Babylonian exiles coming. Oh no.
Oh no.
So we do that. Um, and I think it is accurate to assume that we're not too happy because bad things are happening.
Obviously. Like, who wants the bad things to happen? Not me.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think for the rest of this, a lot of times we try to like get into the nitty-gritty weeds. I'm gonna try to do more of an overview of this
Mm,
conversation rather than looking at any small nitty-gritty detail.
sweet.
I mean, I may get distracted and like dive into something, but who knows?
No, I just
But
feel like maybe we should start game planning a little bit more.
yeah,
No, an overview is good though, because it's just I feel like you need to look at the piece in its entirety and not the little parts.
I fully disagree, but that's okay. Uh,
Oh, okay.
uh, no, I think my favorite way to read Habakkuk is
Mhm.
like the way I was first introduced to Habakkuk is through
Yeah.
performance theory,
Mhm.
uh, and recognizing that like I think a really fun way to look at Habakkuk is through the idea of performance.
Okay.
And so we can kind of see the beginning here where we're starting strong with the critique of God. We're saying,
Mhm.
hey, this is weird, man. I don't like this. And I think that captures the audience. I
Yeah.
think looking at the audience's perspective, without like really, we don't really identify an audience until chapter 2, but like
Mhm.
there's an assumed audience because this is the oracle that the prophet Habakkuk saw.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun and helpful to look at God as a character in this,
Mhm.
because there's this very interactive dialogue that's happening. We get the
Yeah.
first four verses of Habakkuk complaining, and then verses 5 through 11 we get God's response. Then we get 12 through 17 or 2:1 where Habakkuk responds again, and then we get God talking back. So there's this dialogue happening, and I think if we can kind of imagine this on a stage, talking to each other, I
Mhm.
think that creates this realness, this instance of importance that we don't really imagine if it's just this thing that we're reading.
Yeah.
And to imagine this as a play, as a dialogue happening between two characters where there's a deity present to some extent, I think adds weight to this that the author is intending. We have a unique repetition of sight words, of
Mhm.
vision, of seeing, which are fairly common words in the Hebrew Bible,
Yeah.
but there is a density in here, and I think that's intentional as a way to get the viewer, to get the reader to imagine seeing the deity, to see
Mhm.
Habakkuk there conversing with the deity, and then to end it off in chapter 3 with the theophany that we'll talk about later, where
Yeah.
God is physically present doing things in the world.
Mhm.
I think imagining this as a play, as real characters doing things,
Mhm.
is perhaps imperative to understanding
Yeah.
Habakkuk. We also see kind of the introduction of the other characters. We get the Chaldeans coming in,
Mhm.
and I think that's kind of be can kind of be understood as this third character.
Mhm.
And they're never really given much agency. They're always kind of off to the side, and they're also this. They kind of stand off as this vague enemy. They're never
Okay.
really specified as anything particular, and they're kind of always off screen, off to the side, spoken about but never spoken to, never really kind of having dialogue of their own.
Okay.
And I think that does a really good job in allowing Habakkuk to be performed and reperformed and reperformed, because we have this vague enemy, the Chaldeans here,
Yeah.
that can be reimagined for whatever enemy is in the reader's purview of that time. And we see this in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have a famous passage, the Pesher Habakkuk, which is a commentary on the first two chapters of Habakkuk, not the third chapter, because I think that's a later edition or a separate edition. But the Pesher Habakkuk has a commentary on the first two chapters of Habakkuk, and instead of the Chaldeans, it has the um, Pitim. Is that the word that I'm thinking of? Um, oh gosh, you ever just stop your entire the Kittim. Instead of the Chaldeans, they have the Kittim, which are
Yeah.
likely the Romans. And so what we have here is an intentional reimagination of the Habakkuk story, looking at the enemies not of 600 BCE, but of the first century BCE, second century BCE, as the Romans being the enemy. And I
Mhm.
think that is why this story is so powerful and helpful, and why it continues throughout the ages, because it has this rereadability that can be reunderstood. And so much of the Bible does this. And I think this is kind of the text that hones that in for me. That for some reason it clicks with this text,
Mhm.
that we see the text is able to reproduce meaning and reproduce interpretations so that it remains important and
Mhm.
and and feasible. And you always do that. Any like throughout the past 2-3 thousand years, as Christians and Jews have negotiated and interpreted the text, there's always re-understanding, reinterpretations, reimagining of what's going on with the text. But I really like how Habakkuk allows us to do that. So we get that. We have God's response there, where
Yeah.
God essentially is like, hey, calm down, it'll be okay eventually.
Yeah.
And Habakkuk responds with snark and like anger. And,
Mhm.
and what does he say? Are you not from old, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? You shall not die. O Lord, you have marked them for judgment, and you, O rock, have established them for punishment. Like this very high and lofty language talking to God. I think is kind of sarcastic. I think Habakkuk is kind of being like, hey, why are you allowing these bad things to happen? That's messed up, which is
Yeah.
fairly unique in the prophetic category.
Mm-hmm.
Often it's kind of assumed that like, hey, okay, using nations to fight against Israel is a valid form of retribution from God to some
Mm-hmm.
extent. And Habakkuk's kind of fighting against that, saying, no, that's not right. And so it's weird and odd and unique in this that Habakkuk is reporting the hostile actions of the Babylonians and then is upset at God about it, which like makes sense, but is also fairly unique in this specific circumstance. And then we end chapter one with a question, um, kind of using fish and fishing metaphors. He ends
Yeah.
with, "Is he then to keep on emptying his net and destroying nations without mercy?" And I think that's when the audience is kind of invited into the story. The audience now is able to be present and spoken to. It's not just a rhetorical question per se, but something that the audience must recognize. And we've identified that the audience is present now by asking this question. And then we get to chapter two, where we see, "I will stand at my watch post, my station myself on the rampart, and I will keep watch to see what he will say to me and what he will answer concerning my complaint. Then the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision, make it plain on the tablet so that a runner may read it." And then we kind of get an assumed audience. The audience is
Mm-hmm.
now fully engulfed. There is definitely someone who is being spoken to here. It's not just this isolated conversation between Habakkuk and God where the audience is eavesdropping, but rather there's fully an invitation for the audience to be present in the conversation. And then we get God's response here where finally God's like, okay, fine. I will eventually bring down Babylon and it'll be all okay. And then we kind of move into a separate section where we have the woe oracles. I kind of There's a lot of ways to separate this. I kind of separate this at uh, chapter 2, verse 6. It's kind of the second section because now we enter into the woe oracles. And the woe oracles are fairly common in the prophetic literature, where it's just kind of a list of critiques against usually like other nations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we can kind of identify it by the verses that say, "Woe, alas." That's another common translation choice, but it's just kind of Habakkuk being like, "Hey, here's some problems," and in this case, that the Babylonians are up to. So we get five woe oracles. The first woe is against money hoarders and plunderers of nations. The second is
Yeah.
against the greedy. The
Yeah.
third is against a lack of justice. The
Yeah.
fourth is against lawlessness and people
Yeah.
with power.
Yeah.
And the fifth is a woe against idols.
They speak
Fun
to
ones.
me.
There's a
Tatted on
lot.
my skin.
There's a lot of food imagery going on here,
Mm.
and previously as well. And I think that's important that we can talk about at some other point. But
Why not now?
yeah,
We're here.
I think we can imagine the food as
Mm.
props of some sort.
Yeah.
Um, and because like wine especially is used a handful of times.
Mm.
Um, verse 15, "Alas for you who make your neighbors drink, pouring out your wrath until they are drunk, in order to gaze on their nakedness. You will be sated with contempt instead of glory. Drink you yourself and stagger. The cup in the Lord's right hand will come around to you, and shame will come upon your glory." So we get a handful of like wine and food and drink metaphors throughout before and after this, and I think that adds to like the visual aspect of what's going on here,
Mm.
of physical props that can be used to imagine what's going on here. I don't think that's too important to the narrative that I'm trying to express here,
Okay,
but I
sorry.
think it adds more to the performance aspect of what's going on.
Yes.
I will say that what got me interested in Habakkuk
Mm.
for the very first time was verse 17 through 20 in chapter 2.
Mm.
And I have not come to any conclusions about this. I've not. It's one of those things that, like, hey, it captivated me, and that I've never done any further research on. But I think there's a chance that it would make sense that chapter 2 ends at verse 17, and then maybe 18 through 20 were a separate edition. I think that's a possibility. I need to look more into that for confidence.
Mhm.
Um, Also, verse 18 would read better after verse 19, I think.
Yep.
Uh, and there's also like some
Mm,
parts in like verse 9 and 10 where like lines could be moved around that like would make more sense if they were in like a separate order. But
okay.
so I think there
Because
are instances of things like not completely making sense here. And as a point of like things that I want to do further research on,
yeah.
I think that's something that I would love to do. But
And you want to do that because the alas for you was at the beginning of all the other ones except for the first one. That was
yeah,
in the like third line. And then alas for you is 19 in this, but that section starts with 18.
yeah,
So if
and I
those
think
were switched, yeah,
I
I
think
see that.
that's like a very like one of the more obvious ways that you can look at it.
Mm,
Um, that is kind of clear throughout the translation. But
yeah,
yeah, it would make more sense for me for 18 to be after 19.
yeah. No, that
But
makes
yeah,
sense. And then what was the thing you said about 9 and 10?
I know there's some translations like so the JPS Tanakh translation, which it moves some things around. So I'm reading off out of that translation, which is different than the NRSVU
Mm,
E. Uh, but we have a line from the second line in verse 10 is moved up to the middle of verse 9.
mm,
So who have destroyed many peoples in the JPS Tanakh? I'll find it in the NRSVUE by cutting off many peoples. So it reads currently in the NRSVUE, alas for you who get evil gain for your house, setting your nest on high to be safe from the reach of harm. You have devised shame for your house by cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited your life. Whereas an alternative reading could move that middle verse or that middle section from 10 up to the middle of 9 to read something like, alas for you who get evil gain for your house, setting your nest on high by cutting off many peoples to be safe from the reach of harm. And we continue verse 10. So like there's some textual things happening with Habakkuk that
mm.
I do not know off the top of my head that I can't really that I probably shouldn't be speaking to. Anyone listening to this part of this episode, ignore. I don't know what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is things that are questions for me that I want to answer more, as opposed to definite answers and scholarly consensus. But
Matthew is so responsible with his words. It's very impressive. I, on the other hand, let him fly like a bird. So, okay, I like that. So, what next?
oh, next we have chapter 3, which
Yes.
is fun because we get a major tone shift. We get
Okay.
another introduction to Habakkuk,
Mm,
as we had in verse 1 of chapter 1.
yeah.
It says the oracle that the prophet Habakkuk saw, introducing Habakkuk. But we get a weird reintroduction to Habakkuk in chapter 3, reading a prayer of the prophet Habakkuk according to Shigionath, whoever that is, or whatever that is. Who knows? But I think there's reason to believe, good reason to believe that chapter 3 is a separate edition, partially because Pesher Habakkuk doesn't contain chapter 3 that we mentioned earlier, and also like we have this reintroduction, we have this major tone shift. Like I
Mm,
think there's a lot going on differently here.
okay.
Notably, this is the only psalm outside of the Book of Psalms that has stage directions such as Selah, um, which we can do whatever we want with that. But I think that's
Yes.
fun to note.
Which is a unit of measurement.
It's unclear.
Mm,
It could be a unit of measurement. It could be like directions to the either the people playing the music or the people receiving it. It's not entirely sure, it's certain what it is, but it's just kind of there, and I don't have a definitive answer on
yeah.
how Selah is used.
Have you and I talked about how upset I am about ancient art getting lost, like songs and dances, and
Yeah.
they probably had plays.
Hmm.
And so, especially when you have this thing, the Bible, which has lasted through so many years and
Yeah.
generations, we couldn't have whatever ritual went with this
Well,
survive.
because and Hebrew poetry and songs are fairly difficult to reproduce. Like it's very like the structure and the flow doesn't follow any really English or modern conventions. So it's
Mm.
really hard for scholars to kind of reproduce the cadence and the flow and the stuff like that that Hebrew literature is supposed to have. And that's like one of the big struggles in a lot of the Psalms studies.
It's like that's when I wish we had a time machine
Yeah.
to figure out what was it like.
We kind of get a theophany here, which is going to be like the physical manifestation of God on earth, and we see God being this very powerful deity who's at war with nature and perhaps other deities.
Mhm.
Uh, so verse 5, we have before him went pestilence and plague followed close behind. That could also be translated as names of deities, pestilence and plague. Um, Likewise, we get verse 8, was your wrath against the rivers, O Lord, or your anger against the rivers, or your rage against the seas? Um, and I really like the JPS Tanakh translation of that one because it kind of highlights the possibility of it not just using uh, the translation, but rather it transliterates as deities that the Hebrew God could be
Mhm.
fighting against. So verse 8 reads in the JPS Tanakh translation, "Are you wroth, O Lord?" And that's the thing I don't like about the JPS translation. It uses the word wrath. What the hell is a wrath? But are you wroth, O Lord, with Necharim? Is your anger against Necharim, your rage against Yam? So the idea, and then we have verse, or yeah. So the idea of, is this God fighting nature or is this God fighting other deities? I think there's a better argument to say that there's some extra deity warfare going on here, and we have things like the sun and the moon raising their hands and doing things as well. So there's this a lot of metaphoric language, as we would call it, or um, language that is kind of inviting
Yeah.
readings that would evoke other deities as opposed to just being God having complete control over nature in the natural way that we would imagine it.
The GPS sounds more whimsical.
The JPS is more whimsical. There's this one verse in Job that is my favorite translation of all time. I don't remember what it is, but it's something along the lines of your words are just so loquacious, meaning like it's complaining about someone using like flowery and like fancy language, and in
Mm.
doing that it uses the word loquacious. So
Loquacious.
the JPS Tanakh version, the particularly the Jewish Study Bible, I think is a
Mm.
great translation because of the Study Bible notes, but also apart from it being based off the Masoretic text without really looking at too many other ancient manuscripts apart from every once in a while, I think it's a really fun and good translation.
Do you actually need the definition of wrath?
No, no,
You
no, it's
know,
fine.
can
Yeah.
I say it for our audience? It's intensely
Sure.
angry.
Yeah.
Are you wroth? And I am about to start using this. About to
Yeah.
start texting people. Are you wroth?
Are you Roth?
Are you
Oh.
wroth?
But yeah, we get God being very powerful, interacting with nature, and then God promises future victory, and then get in the final kind of closing few verses, we kind of get this message that, hey, you just need to keep calm, carry on, and trust in God. And there we are. I think
You did
so
not just
fun.
say keep calm and carry on.
Keep calm and carry on.
Oh, yeah, get that on a sign. Put it over your couch. Well,
Yeah, it ends. Yeah, the end. Though the fig tree does not blossom, and no fruit is on the vines, though the produce of the olive fails, and the field yield no food, though the flock is cut off from the fold, and there is no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will exalt in the God of my salvation. God the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of deer, and makes me tread upon the heights. And and so we get the idea there. Like there are bad things happening, but still, oh my goodness, God is so great. Which I think is a very, very big tone shift from chapters 1 and 2
yeah,
that cannot be overlooked.
no. And it's, I love their optimism. I really do. It's so hard to have that bright outlook. It is so crazy to read something like this and know that I could relate to someone from so long ago
Yeah.
on feelings about certain situations and
Yeah.
injustice and having to witness that,
Hmm.
what that despair feels like. I'm trying to get to the point they're at in that last section where I'm just like, but things are still good because one of the best ways to fight adversity is to have joy. Joy through adversity is a gift and a blessing and a talent that a lot of people struggle with,
Hmm.
myself included.
Sure.
So it's really, it feels very grounding to like
Hmm.
know we could have that kind of just emotional sympathy with these ancient people.
Yeah. No, and I think that's why this book is so important, that should still be read today because it does resonate. Like like we see, especially if you're religious of some sort, especially if you're Christian or Jewish or something, like you can definitely resonate with, hey God, why are you allowing these bad things to happen? Okay, that's a I think a question that any religious person has. And then follow, like if we follow the complaints, follow the woes, and then whether or not we have chapter 3 or not, I think the fact that we can wrestle with having chapter 3 or not also makes it even more relevant and fun, because it we can end on the complaint and hey, we need to do something about this, or like something needs to be done about this, or we can go into the prayer in chapter 3 and and try to find joy in the adversity, even as messed up as that may be. So I think it is very very existential in that sense as well, and I think that's why this passage, this um, book is important and should be continued to be read, because I don't think we talked about this. I don't know if I've ever been to a service, a religious service that references Habakkuk.
No,
Like this
that's
is like one
good.
of my favorite. Like we've referenced Jonah and like pretty much everything else we talked about in this podcast somewhere because we're hitting all the hits. But Habakkuk, I think, is so slept on and has such a good text. Like if you've listened to this episode and you have no idea what Habakkuk's about, like read it. It's 3 chapters. It'll take you 5 minutes, and it's fun. It's weird, but it's fun. And we should read more ancient literature.
I'm fully on board. Honestly, if we want to get through of his surrounding friends, I still have my Bible all divvied up from our for a year in the Bible read, which maybe some people have fallen lax on. Um, but there was all these like there's so many little books. So I could do the
Yeah.
little books.
Hmm.
But you're so right. There's a schedule of major stories I feel like churches hit, and then in order to get the deeper dives, you have to feel a calling to go to those classes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought about this. I was thinking about this. I was like, why wasn't there a day at church where they went over the fact that the New Testament was like written in Greek, and talked about the history of the making of the Bible?
Yeah.
You think that would be a service,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. I think it should be.
Yeah.
Speaking as someone who's like not involved in religious institutions at all, it should
Yeah.
be. But I think that would rub people the wrong way. That's beside the point. We don't need to get into
Yeah. Well,
our
I
yeah.
shouldn't have been 28 and learning that the New Testament was written in Greek originally.
Yeah.
That was my thing.
No, I think the reason that I want to do this podcast, this project, is because I think religious literacy is so low in both the religion in America. I don't want to speak out for other places, but in America, I think the religious literacy for both the religion of people that claim as their own and the religion of those around them is so low. And when we look at stories like Habakkuk, I think that's highlighted
Yeah.
because I don't know many people that are like, oh yeah, let's talk about Habakkuk in Christian or Jewish circles.
Mhm.
But it's still considered scripture in those circles, and there's still this level of importance, but it gets ignored. And I think conversations like this,
Yeah.
where you and I can talk about the scholarly stuff about it, and then we get into the detours of like, hey, why does this matter? I think that's what's important. I think that's what's vital about these texts, and why religion is still important, why religion still matters.
Everyone loves to talk about Job. I hear about Job a lot, but
Yeah,
I would love to talk about Habakkuk because
yeah.
I think it's for the people. It's for the masses.
Mhm.
It's for everyone who wants goodness in the world and asks, why does injustice exist? It's okay, fine. I'm convinced it's up there.
Yeah.
It'll never be Esther, but it's
No,
up
no.
there.
And I think if we're going to get into, if we're diverging from biblical studies and getting into theology, why not just have this conversation? I think there still are problems with this text,
Mm,
in that we have the solution here
yeah.
of to, hey, why is there a problem with the world? The solution is God needs to destroy all the bad guys. And I think that is not good. I
No.
think that is something that is still like, oh no, I don't like the conclusion that we came to. And I think there's
Yeah.
still so much that theologically, if that, or just, existentially, if we want to wrestle with this text and create its importance for us,
Yeah.
to find places where we agree and disagree and see where it speaks and where it doesn't speak, and where you can push back and where you can take more on. I
Mm,
think looking at this as just this, hey, this is a cool, fun text, does a disservice as well. Like
yeah.
we need to be cautious around it as well.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on, and it's so much fun. I
Yeah.
think I think more people should be talking about this stuff.
Mhm.
More people should be in book clubs.
Yes, they should. Do we have anything else to say about Habakkuk?
um, let me glance through my notes that I made
Let
like
me
2 years ago about Habakkuk. See if we
Guys,
have any other fun facts.
this is our second time filming a Habakkuk episode. If we ever put up a paywall for things, it'll be behind that, the first one.
Yeah. um. Oh, Habakkuk's name. I think that's fun. Um.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, it's not mentioned anywhere else apart
Mm,
from Bell and the Dragon story,
yeah.
but it's likely cognate with an Akkadian word, either like Hambakuku or Habakuku or something like that, and is probably like the name of a plant or something.
A
And
tree?
that's a tree, no, a plant of some sort, and maybe that's why we get like the associations with food. Because
Mm,
in Bell and the Dragon, where we have that story, Habakkuk has to make soup for Daniel, and he gets yeeted by the hare over to Daniel, and he gives him the soup. So that could be
more
why
food.
Habakkuk might be associated with food, but I don't know. It's just one of those fun factoids, Habakkuk and food. But yeah, I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you all for listening. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and send it to your favorite cousin. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, Bluesky, Facebook. Email us at theriligioustreehouse@gmail.com. Tell us all of your critiques and your agreements and your questions, either about Habakkuk or other things. Send us your movie recommendations. Let us know what you want us to watch, and share with your nieces and nephews. But yeah, thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, I'm very much thinking about this stage production
Okay.
because I think it should be two people in chairs, and then
Okay.
the Chaldeans will be a shadow trick on like the
Oh.
back that
Yeah.
like when they're brought up like passes by.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
other character is there again? Is there anything else?
I mean that's really all we get until chapter 3, where it's just God, causing havoc across the world.
Okay.
Uh, I think you could also kind of represent the Chaldeans as like the king figure. The king kind of gets represented as the one for all of the Chaldeans.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think they would be, I think we would have a bumbling king, much like that of Esther, which
Mm-hmm.
is a figure that we're making fun of, even though God is like defending them and being like, "Hey, good job, my Chaldean king, my Babylonian king,
A puppet.
a puppet, yes, Kermit,
Yeah.
Kermit.
I'm telling you, I'm seeing this in my mind, and I think it would be a showstopper.
I
I
think
think this needs to be the next stage play.
I think we need a Muppets version of the Bible.